is a wonderful Good Friday. Welcome to the Sportsline Podcast here on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Now, I've used this before, so I'm going to use it again. As Kenny Loggins sang in his huge hit from 1979, "This Is It." Now, following a lengthy NHL regular season, well, we're about to get hit in the face with what should be 8 outstanding first-round playoff series. Now, although 5 Canadian teams are in the mix, it's the all-Canadian Battle of Ontario that certainly has our focus. To break down the Maple Leafs and Senators, let's bring in our good friend from the nation's capital. He's the host and radio voice of all things Ottawa, AJ Jakubec. Great to have you back on, partner.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Bubs.
Let me start with this. I remember, obviously, with the translation, because we actually share a little here in Hamilton and Ottawa, the likes of a Michael Andlauer, Steve Staios, obviously having great history in the Ontario Hockey League, the American Hockey League in Hamilton, and now the focus for those two individuals is Ottawa. And I remember Michael saying that I'm tired of being Ontario's other team. Well, be careful what you wish for, I guess, in some ways, I guess is what Toronto fans are saying. But in the nation's capital, how's the feeling for the Sens right now?
There's a lot of passion, a lot of excitement. It's been a long wait. I grew up in Edmonton, and I spent a sizable part of my life there, including professionally. So I know what it was like being part of the quote-unquote decade of darkness where they missed the playoffs 10 years in a row. Interesting, today is the 10-year anniversary that they got Connor McDavid in the draft lottery, or at least the right to take him in the draft lottery. So amazing how fortunes have changed for example, Edmonton and say Buffalo, who's now on a 14-year playoff drought. And of course, that just down the road for me. And I'm sure a lot of Sabres fans watching this as well. So for Ottawa, it's been painful, maybe not quite as painful for as long as Buffalo fans have endured, but 7 years is a long time out of the playoffs. And to get back in and play Toronto, the team, it's interesting. I mean, I think most older Ottawa Senators fans would say the biggest rival for the Sens is the Toronto Maple Leafs. Some younger fans, because it's been so long since they played in the playoffs, might say Montreal, because it's been certainly more spicy in recent years. But I do think that'll change. I do think it'll be full Toronto after this week to 2 week series is up, and excited. The fan base is excited, and it's great to see, because I feel like the city is always better in the playoffs when the Ottawa Senators are a part of it.
You know what, you talked about that past history, and of course the Maple Leafs and the Senators, playing 4 times. Of course, the Leafs winning 4 times. And it got to the point there where the Maple Leafs were like, pooh, in terms of Ottawa. And I'm sure that annoyed Ottawa hockey fans as well, too. Does it mean anything when you look back to those series, which, you know what, let's be honest, in the 2000 and the 2001 series, I mean, there was hate. Like, there was some serious hate going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, talk about hate. How about 2002 and everything that happened in that series? And Travis Green was, of course, the head coach of the Ottawa Senators, was a part of that Toronto Maple Leafs team. He was involved in an altercation along with Darcy Tucker at the Ottawa bench. So there was a lot of hate back then. I think it does matter. It absolutely matters. And for me, I felt if the Ottawa Senators were playing Tampa Bay or Florida in round 1, it felt like you're kind of playing with house money. You're the underdog in any of these series, no matter what. But it does raise the stakes a little bit, because I feel like it's going to be harder to just slough off, oh, well, great season, you lost in, especially if it ends, with Ottawa losing in 4 or 5 games. I think that would be really tough to swallow. And, you'd still have a lot of positives to look back on, but it would be tougher to look at that if Toronto wins this series, and especially if Ottawa doesn't play up to their capabilities. So, there's high stakes here. I think there's higher stakes for Toronto because Ottawa I think they could be a Stanley Cup contender in a few years if they continue to build things the right way. It doesn't feel like they're there right now, but they're in the playoffs, and when you're in, you always have a chance. There's always a Cinderella that surprises a little bit. So, in fact, like if I were to rate, Ottawa Senators teams in the past, that 2007 team that got to the Cup wasn't even as good, in my opinion, as teams in 2003 and 2006 who didn't get there. So sometimes you just get on a roll. 2017 was a prime example. The last time Ottawa made the playoffs, and they were one goal away from getting to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
And if they get there, they're playing Nashville, and it's probably a 50-50 series. So anyways, we'll see how it plays out against the Leafs. They do play well against Toronto, which is a good sign. I throw regular season records out the window once the playoffs start, but I do think it'll give them some confidence knowing that they can beat this Toronto team the way they played the Leafs in the regular season. So I do give them a pretty good chance to pull off the upset here.
Well, yeah, let's go to that season series. And I think it was a very impressive what Ottawa did. And I think when I actually went back and looked at the NHL highlight packs of each one of those three games. I saw an Ottawa Senators team that played a harder brand of hockey than Toronto. And at times it looked to me that Toronto became somewhat unglued and frustrated. And none of their big guys really got off in those three games.
Well, Ottawa, they can play a strong defensive game. I think the key in a lot of those victories was just getting the lead and being able to clamp things down, especially in Toronto. Well, to be fair, in Ottawa, you're trying to quiet the crowd a little bit, although I do think that could be a little bit different come playoff time, the way they've dispersed the tickets to mainly season ticket holders. As long as those season ticket holders got those tickets out to Sens fans, look, there will be Leaf fans there from the secondary market. There's no doubt. It's just too big a fan base. But I do think that it should be more pro-Sens than you see at typical Battle of Ontario games in the regular season, where it's more than 50-50 Leaf fans to Sens fans. But I digress. Yeah, I feel like scoring early is going to be big in this series because both these teams have really improved defensively, but Ottawa in particular, 10 shutouts this year. I mean, all three of their goalies had at least 3 shutouts. Levi Merilainen, Anton Forsberg, and of course Linus Ullmark, who's the guy going into the playoffs here. But Ottawa's got a balanced team. They've got a deep team. There's no doubt the Leafs have more firepower in terms of their top 6, but Ottawa's got on their fourth line Fabian Zetterlund, who scored over 40 goals in the NHL the last 2 years with Jersey, San Jose, and a trade deadline pickup here with Ottawa. And then they've got Adam Gaudette, who surprisingly scored 19 goals this year. And you've got Nick Cousins, who won a Stanley Cup last year. So, and then I think one of the key lines in this series is going to be the line of Shane Pinto, Ridley Gregg, and Mike Amadio. I don't think I need to introduce Leaf fans to Ridley Gregg because he certainly did that last year with that slap shot into the empty net, which led to the cross-check from Morgan Rielly and the subsequent suspension. But he's a guy that gets under your skin, and he's a good hockey player as well at both ends of the rink. Shane Pinto, it'll be interesting to see how he plays in this series because as the checking line center, he's going to have a big job. And Mike Amadio has great playoff success with the Vegas Golden Knights, where he won a Stanley Cup. So that's going to be a key line, because if that line can somewhat neutralize, you're not going to completely shut down the big boys for Toronto. But if that and we'll see if they get the Marner Matthews Nyes line, and that's certainly a tall task. You're not going to completely shut those guys down, but if you can end up somewhat even against that line, then you open things up for Tkachuk and Stützle and some of the other top players for the Ottawa Senators. So we'll see how it plays out. I truly feel it's a 50-50 type series. I know Leaf fans, I've been listening to some Toronto radio this week. It makes me think that Ottawa's playing the 79 Habs here. But I feel like this is a 50-50 series. The Leafs still have that seed of doubt. When you've lost, yeah, you've got playoff experience. Okay, that's fine. But they've lost 8 of 9 playoff series. Like, that's, if they're 3-8 or 4-8 in the last 8 years, I'd be like, okay, yeah, they've lost to some Floridas and some Tampas and some Bostons, and that's a tough road, and it has been a tough road. I get it. But, you know, what happened against Montreal when they were a number 1 seed in the Canadian division? That's the thing with this Toronto Maple Leaf team. They haven't been able to get it done, and especially in round 1, there's a lot of pressure to get it done. And I think from an Ottawa perspective, if they can plant that seed of doubt in game 1 and find a way to win, or at least find a way to split the first couple of games, come back to Ottawa to what should be a frenzied environment, I think they can continue to plant that seed of doubt. But I'm expecting 6 or 7 games either way. That's what I'm hoping for. I think it'll be great. We don't want to see, even if it's Ottawa sweeping in 4, we don't want to see 4 games. We want to see 6 or 7, like the battles that these teams had in 2002 and 2004. Those were epic battles. Toronto won. Good on them. But let's see this hostility renewed for 6 or 7 games again.
The question mark on Brady Tkachuk. I know that he had missed 8 consecutive, hadn't played since March 30th, and did play last night. What's the situation on his health?
Yeah, I think he's good to go. If he was at 85%, there's no way they're playing him last night. So, and he took a high stick. But they just took him out for precautionary reasons. He talked to the media after. He said he's fine. Travis Green said he's fine. He was there, handed out his jersey off his back. It was that on Fan Appreciation Night last night. So good to go. And you know, that's the thing. I mean, this Ottawa team, and again, it can be an advantage. It can be a disadvantage depending on how you look at it. There's no doubt Toronto is more battle tested in the playoffs, even though they've lost 8 of those 9 series in the last 8 years. Ottawa does not have a lot of playoff experience. Now, they do have a lot more. Steve Staios made some fantastic moves in the offseason, because basically it was Claude Giroux who had playoff experience before, and now he added Mike Amadio, Stanley Cup winner, David Perron, Stanley Cup winner, Nick Cousins, Stanley Cup winner. So you've got one of those players along with Giroux on each forward line. You've got Nick Jensen, who's been fantastic and a great fit, allowing Thomas Chabot to play the best hockey of his career on the blue line. So Jensen's got playoff experience in Washington, and Linus Ullmark in goal as well. And Linus's playoff experience, much like the Leafs, even though he's been fantastic in the regular season, 3-7 in the playoffs. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, for guys like Brady Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson and Tim Stützle and Drake Batherson and Shane Pinto and Ridley Gregg, Thomas Chabot, like guys that have been in this organization for a long time, this will be their first playoff experience. How do they handle it? Well, I think we got a taste of how Brady Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson handled the pressure of playing at the very highest level at the Four Nations. Brady Tkachuk was one of the best players in that tournament, and Jake Sanderson, who started in the press box, he was a late addition due to injury, started in the press box, but when he got into the lineup due to injury, he ended up being one of Team USA's best defensemen and scored in that championship game against Canada. So, and Sanderson's been a guy, I think, like, the one, when Leaf fans look at, and I hear this all across the country, Jake Sanderson doesn't get enough love. He is Ottawa's best player. It's not Brady Tkachuk, in my opinion. It's not Tim Stützle. It's not Linus Ullmark. Jake Sanderson is Ottawa's best player. He is going to be a Norris Trophy candidate. That doesn't mean winner, because there's a lot of great competition when you're talking about Makar and Hughes, and Hudson down the road is going to be a hell of a player based on what we saw this year. But Jake Sanderson is going to be a Norris Trophy candidate for the next 10 to 12 years. He skates effortlessly. He had some struggles, probably the biggest struggles in his NHL career in the first part of the year, but he has been playing his best hockey since the Four Nations. One-man breakout, but he's so good defensively, and he's improved his offensive game. He's one of the highest-scoring blue liners in the NHL since the Four Nations. So I do think that's the one area, because I've heard some people say, well, if Ottawa wins this series, it's only because of Ullmark. I don't see that at all. I actually think that the goaltending matchup might be even, because Anthony Stolarz has been outstanding this year, and you've got two guys. Now, I'd probably rather have just one guy so there's no controversy, but you do have two capable guys. If things don't go well with Stolarz, you've got Woll. So, sure. Look, I think that's a bit of a wash in terms of the goaltending. There's no doubt the Leafs have more firepower amongst their top two lines. I think Ottawa's got a little bit more depth. But on the blue line, while I do think if you look 6v6, that's probably pretty even. The addition of Tanev has been outstanding for Toronto. But I look at Jake Sanderson, and then there is not a Toronto Maple Leaf defenseman that can do what Jake Sanderson does. So I think if Ottawa wins this series, we're going to be looking back and saying Jake Sanderson was one of the most important reasons why. So this is going to be, at least for a national audience, I think, a bit of a coming out party. Sens fans are used to watching him play such an effortless game. But I do feel like it's going to be a bit of a coming out party nationally and around the league for those that maybe haven't paid as much attention to Jake Sanderson, because we've heard it, like when he signed his extension for $8 million plus, heard the whispers around the league. What are they doing? Well, they were getting ahead of the curve, because this is a guy that, especially the way the cap is going up, if he signed in a couple of years, it would probably start at 10 or 11 million. So looking forward to it, though. It should be a great matchup, and love the fact that you've got two teams that are a little bit different, but also kind of similar in the sense that new coaches have come in and brought in more responsible games across the board. And I don't know if that's going to lead to 1-0, 2-1 games, which we hope. We're hoping for 4-3, 5-4, 6-5. Doesn't feel like we're going to get that, but it does feel like there are some similarities to these groups as well.
Obviously the Sens fan, that's why we're talking to you, because we would love this Sens perspective here. And here's something I found online, and maybe you can comment. You kind of touched on this just briefly earlier. Sens fans selling tickets. I saw this online, and this is how it was titled. This is Jeff. Jeff resold his Ottawa Senators playoff tickets for a $300 profit, and now he has to watch games from home. Jeff doesn't care that he subjected the innocent Sens fans in the seats around him to sitting next to an obnoxious Leafs fan. Don't be like Jeff. # Go Sens Go. Is that really a problem in the nation's capital right now?
Oh, it's been a huge problem, but especially in the regular season. And I get it. Look, Leaf fans target two of the, this year was only one. They were only here once, which is another story. I mean, we saw the Islanders twice. We saw Columbus twice. They're in the same division. It's the biggest rival, or unless you're 12 years old and you pick the Habs. But I don't understand the scheduling. But maybe they'll change that going forward for the better. But essentially, if you're looking at 1 or 2 games in the calendar and you're a Leafs fan, whether you're in Toronto and you've typically come up for these games, or whether you're in Kingston or Belleville or Peterborough, or maybe you live in Ottawa, and there's certainly a lot of Leaf fans that are in Ottawa as well. They circle those games. And so Sens fans, it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. They get sick of being outnumbered in the building, so they say, well, I'm gonna sell my tickets to those games and recoup some of my season ticket money. And that's their right, and especially in the regular season. But in the playoffs, you want this to be a Sens atmosphere, not a 50-50 atmosphere. And I do think it's going to be based on what they've done. There's still going to be people that bought extra tickets and found their way just to sell those on the open market to the highest bidder, which, that means, and there's a lot of demand here in Ottawa as well. So there's no guarantee if you put those out that it's going to go to a Leaf fan, but it feels like it's probably 50-50. If you put those out in the open market, they could get in Leafs fans' hands. But yeah, it's been a big problem. It's one thing if it's 1, 2, 3, 4,000. But when you get outnumbered in your own building, Daniel Alfredson with the infamous line, score a goal early at home to take the crowd out, like, that's not ideal. You want some sort of home ice advantage. And I do think with what Michael Andlauer and Cyril Leader have done here, and they sold about 1,000 season tickets just in the lead up, but season tickets had priority. Now, it was frustrating for hardcore Sens fans that maybe can't afford season tickets, and I get that. But especially for this round, they had to ensure that the building was going to be, because there's just so much pent up demand. If there was no demand here, then it would be a different story. But because there's so much demand, they did what they could to try and get as many of those tickets into Ottawa Senators fans' hands. And we'll see how that plays out Thursday, Saturday, when we have Game 3 and Game 4 here in Ottawa.
You're a professional broadcaster, and I hate doing this to professional broadcasters, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm going to go rapid pace with you here. You just give me the series and what you think in 6, maybe a sentence or two about each one. Obviously, Sens Leafs.
I think it's an even series. I like the intangibles for Ottawa. I'm going to say Ottawa Senators in 7. They've never beat the Leafs, and they've never won a series in 7 games. So I'll say they end both of those jinxes or droughts or whatever you want to call it. Sens in 7.
Blues Jets.
Scary matchup for Winnipeg. I'll say Winnipeg in 6. I do worry about that. That's one of the only goalies in the NHL in these Stanley Cup playoffs that you worry might come in and potentially outplay the man who might win the Hart Trophy, and Connor Hellebuck. He's definitely winning the Vezina, but we saw Jordan Binnington. He can make you mad with some bad goals, but my goodness, with the way he performed, especially in that championship game in the Four Nations, he makes me nervous. Dylan Holloway's a big loss for St. Louis, but I'll say, but the Jets are missing Ehlers as well, and that's a big loss, and we'll see when Velarde's able to come back. So I do think this is a legit Jets team. I'll say Jets in 6.
Just a side note off this: who's under more pressure, Connor Hellebuck or Stuart Skinner in Edmonton?
I think Hellebuck. Mm-hmm. I mean, Skinner's 150. Look, Hellebuck's the better goalie by a mile. Don't get me started. I'm an Edmonton, Ottawa guy. That's where I've lived almost my entire life. So don't get me started on Skinner, who's an okay backup, but he's not a starter for a Stanley Cup contender. But I think Hellebuck, because they have to at least get past round 1. Look, if you lose to Dallas or Colorado in round 2 and 6 or 7, then I think you can look at that and say, well, you probably could have or should have got a team of that caliber in the conference finals or the finals. But it's just the way the playoff format is set up that you would get a team like that in round 2. But they have to get past round 1. So I would definitely say Hellebuck.
So let's go with that Oilers and Kings series. They meet once again.
Yeah, this is probably a little Edmonton bias here. I'll say Edmonton in 7. I don't think the Oilers are getting past Vegas if they play them in round 2. They, talked about Dylan Holloway. Huge mistakes not signing Holloway and Skinner, but sometimes you just have a team's number. Boston with Toronto. You look at the Leafs with the Sens, 20 to 25 years ago. And I'll say, especially with McDavid and Draisaitl, it's hard for me to bet against those two guys. It's a flawed team, but I'll say Oilers in 6.
And I'm sure this is not, at least on a regional basis, kind of special for you with what the Habs did, but they got to face Ovi and the Capitals.
Montreal in 7.
Oh!
I don't like the way the Caps have played down the stretch. Too much probably celebrating, focused on getting goals for Ovechkin. They haven't played great hockey down the stretch. In Montreal, the one thing, they're a weird team. They're a streaky team. I can see, because they're a streaky team, I can see this going the other way in 4 or 5. But you look at the teams they beat since Christmas. I mean, they probably have more quality wins, playoff wins, Stanley Cup contending team wins than any team in the NHL. So I think Montreal has a round in them. I'll pull the upset. Montreal wins this one.
Does the rookie have a lot to do with it too?
Could help. They need some secondary scoring. So, I mean, that could come from a lot of different areas. But, I feel like in the end, you still win games and playoff games because of your top players. And my goodness, Suzuki, Caulfield, and Hudson in particular have been lights out. But they're going to need some secondary scoring if they're going to win this series.
AJ, this has been unbelievable, and it is so, I feel lucky, actually, that we get to chat about a Battle of Ontario. It's been so long coming, and the fact that, you know what, you did bring up the Sabres. I'm in a neutral position, not a Leaf fan, never a Leaf fan. I do have a little feeling in my heart for the Sens because they are always considered Ontario's other team. And, of course, the Andlauer-Staios connection obviously kind of makes me feel that way. So, of course, being a long-suffering Sabres fan, I kind of like what's going on in the nation's capital with your club. So I think let's hope for some fun. As you said, let's hope for some hate. Let's hope that this rivalry gets fired up and that, this series can set off something for maybe the next decade.
Yeah, no, it'll be. Hopefully, we just get a great series. That's all I'm hoping for. And if Ottawa ends up winning in 6 or 7 games or 4, even better. No, just kidding. We'll see how it plays out. But to your long-suffering Sabres heart, I feel like, they swept the Ottawa Senators this year. That's the one team Ottawa didn't want to play in playoff hockey. I do feel like they're so close yet so far, but I feel like there's too much talent there that team has to make the playoffs in the next year or two.
I don't understand it, but this year I actually thought it was over. The jinx was over. They started out nice, and I don't know. I thought Lindy was the guy to do it. Maybe still will be. Anyway, that's next year's problem. AJ, thanks for joining us, partner. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the series. I know you're going to be in the T-Dot for Game 1. Enjoy the proceedings. Wear your Ottawa paraphernalia proud too.
Well, I don't think I'll be wearing any Sens gear into the press box. You got to be neutral.
Okay, fair enough.
But this is one of those series where, look, you especially just for these long-suffering fans, you just want to see you want to see them get over that. So we'll see how it plays out. Should be fun.
Thanks for joining us, partner. We'll get looking forward to some Red Blacks and Ticats talk soon. Just around the corner.
You bet. Can't wait. It's just around the corner. Cheers, Bubs.
Cheers. Thanks. That's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And if you've just seen it and heard, we love talking sports. And boy, this is a great time of year to be consuming sports. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. Do it multiple times, folks. It's free. If you have something to say, it's also free. And we appreciate your comments. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much and enjoy Game 1 of the playoffs.